The air in the grand hall of Seraph's Prime shimmered with a light that seemed almost alive. Towers of crystal rose high into the alien sky, reflecting the sun's strange green hue in patterns that made the city look like it was breathing. Kale stepped cautiously across the polished floor, every movement watched by rows of alien guards whose expressions were unreadable, their bodies sleek and perfect. To them, he was an oddity, a fragile human from a planet that barely mattered in the galaxy's grand scheme. Kale felt the weight of the stairs but held his head high. He had trained for this moment, not with weapons or armor, but with a lifetime of survival. Every scar on his body told a story, and each one had prepared him for this encounter. His skin bore the memory of fire, sharp edges, and deep wounds that had healed slowly, painfully, leaving permanent reminders. His hands were calloused from work, and his legs carried the faint tremor of muscles pushed too far and yet made stronger. To the aliens, he must have seemed fragile, but Kale knew otherwise. At the far end of the hall, seated on a throne carved from the largest crystal of Seraph's Prime, was the Queen. She was taller than any human, her skin a pale shade of silver, and her eyes, the color of liquid metal, seemed to pierce through Kale before he had even spoken. She moved with a calm precision that suggested centuries of careful rule. Her expression was unreadable, perfect, as if emotion were a flaw she had long since erased. The hall fell silent as Kale approached. The floor beneath him hummed faintly, a reminder of the energy that powered this alien world. He knew he could not rely on technology or brute strength here. The Queen had never seen a human in her life, and the galaxy spoke of humans as weak. That misconception would be corrected, not with words, but with the quiet strength of someone who had survived when all odds were against him. "Step forward, human," the Queen said. Her voice was smooth, almost musical, but carried authority that made Kale's heart race. He obeyed, taking a few steps forward until he stood directly before her throne. Kale lowered his eyes respectfully. "I am Kale of Earth," he said. His voice was steady, though his pulse was quick. "I have come as your guest and as a representative of my people." "Humans," she said finally, almost to herself. "A fragile species, yet here you stand." Then it was gone, replaced by the mask of perfection she always wore. The Queen leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense. "Explain one of these stories," she commanded. "Tell me why a being as frail as you has earned the right to stand before me." "This scar," he said, lifting his arm slightly to reveal a thin white line along his forearm, "is from falling into a ravine on my home planet. I survived because I did not give up. I pulled myself out, even when I had nothing left." "And these scars," he said, pointing to the jagged marks along his legs and torso, "are from fires, from storms, and from battles I did not choose. I wear them not as shame, but as proof that I endured. Each one taught me patience, courage, and the value of life, no matter how fragile it may seem." She had seen countless species claim strength and bravery, but there was something about the way Kale spoke that made her pause. Humans were not known for endurance. They were curious, impulsive, and often reckless. Yet this one carried his history in his body and presented it with dignity, without arrogance. One of the advisors, a tall alien with skin like polished stone, whispered something to the Queen. Kale did not hear the words, but he saw her nod slightly. He understood that the human's reputation was not flattering here, and yet he had already begun to shift her perception. "Very well, Kale of Earth," the Queen said at last. Her voice held a note of curiosity now, sharper than before. "You will remain here in my city for observation. Your endurance and your stories will be watched. Perhaps there is more to humans than I have been told. Ensure he is comfortable, though I expect he will not rest easily." Yet, no matter how impressive the technology, Kale's focus was on his own presence here. The Queen had noticed him, not for his weaponry or intelligence, but for his resilience. That was the true human advantage, and it had already begun to set him apart. The quarters prepared for Kale were spacious, far beyond anything he had imagined. They overlooked the city and the distant horizon, where twin suns cast strange shadows across the crystalline towers. Despite the luxury, Kale felt no desire to rest. There was work to do, observations to make, and a species to prove wrong. Over the next few days, Kale walked through the city under the watchful eyes of alien guards. Every challenge he faced, adapting to the air, adjusting to the gravity, learning the alien customs, he met with quiet determination. Some of the aliens laughed at his small mistakes, but Kale had learned to survive ridicule as well as injury. Each mistake was a lesson, each challenge an opportunity. Word of Kale's presence spread quickly. Among the Queen's advisors and scholars, whispers grew. The humans, they said, were frail, but this one survived everything. How could a species so small endure so much? Even the most skeptical began to watch him in secret, noting how he moved, how he solved problems, and how he never complained. Kale's scars became a point of fascination. They were not just marks, they were living proof of survival. When he walked through the streets, some aliens touched their own faces, comparing their flawless skin to the stories etched into his body. The young ones whispered that perhaps the human spirit was stronger than any of their technology, stronger than even the Queen herself could imagine. One evening, Kale was called to the throne room again. The Queen awaited him, standing now instead of sitting. Her gaze was intense, studying every inch of him as he approached. She said nothing at first, only observed. Kale felt a strange mixture of fear and pride. He did not flinch. He did not bow too low. He simply stood, showing her the scars that told his story. Finally, she spoke. "I have seen many beings claim strength," she said, her voice softer than before. "But you carry it in your very body. It is not your skill, your speed, or your technology. It is something far older, far deeper. You endure. Sometimes it is about patience, about standing up even when everything wants to push you down. Every scar is a reminder to keep moving forward, no matter the cost." For the first time, Kale realized he had touched something in her that no one had before. His scars, his endurance, and his simple humanity had begun to break through her perfect composure. Kale spent the night looking out over the alien city, thinking of Earth, of the trials that had left him scarred, and of the journey ahead. He knew that survival alone would not be enough. He would have to continue to show the strength of humanity in ways that could not be measured by technology or science. And yet, for the first time, he felt a small hope. If the Queen herself could see the truth in his scars, perhaps the galaxy could too. The next morning, Kale woke early and trained himself in the alien environment. The guards watched silently, their skepticism still present but softened by curiosity. Every scar ached slightly in the unfamiliar gravity, yet Kale welcomed it. Pain was familiar. It was a teacher, not an enemy. He ran, climbed, and stretched, pushing his body to the limits he knew, preparing for whatever tests the Queen might set next. And in the throne room, the Queen watched from afar, her thoughts tangled in ways they had never been before. She had always ruled through order and reason, yet this human challenged her in a different way. There was no arrogance in him, only truth. No weapons, no threats, just scars and endurance. For the first time in centuries, the Queen wondered, perhaps humans were not fragile at all. Perhaps they were something entirely different, something extraordinary. The next morning, Kale was summoned once again to the throne room. The hall felt colder this time, not in temperature, but in the quiet intensity that filled the air. The Queen stood before her advisors, her gaze focused entirely on him. She did not speak immediately, only watched as he approached. Every step he took echoed in the vast room, a sound that seemed louder than it should have been. Kale's body remembered every scar, every injury, and every trial he had endured, and he carried himself with the calm strength that only experience could bring. "Kale of Earth," the Queen finally said, her voice firm, "you have survived much already, and yet I wish to see more. Not for cruelty, but for understanding. Your species is new to us, and yet you claim endurance. Prove it, so that my people may learn what humans truly are." He knew that the Queen did not need to be convinced of his survival. She needed to witness the human spirit in action. The first test was in a chamber designed to simulate the harsh conditions of distant planets. The air was thin, gravity variable, and temperature swings extreme. Aliens who had tried before had failed quickly, their bodies unable to adapt. Kale stepped in carefully, feeling the chamber's strange gravity tug at his limbs. His body ached as if recalling old injuries, but he breathed steadily, letting the memory of past survival carry him forward. Minutes passed, and then hours. Kale climbed simulated cliffs that twisted unnaturally, crawled through narrow tunnels filled with sharp edges, and balanced on surfaces that shifted beneath his feet. His body strained, his scars burning with pain, yet he pressed on. Other species would have fallen after the first hour, complaining, panicking, or giving up entirely. Kale continued, using lessons learned from Earth, how to improvise, how to use small advantages, how to survive when all seems impossible. The Queen observed from her high platform, silent except for the occasional motion of her hand to signal her advisors. She had expected frailty, weakness, and quick defeat. Instead, she saw resilience, calm, unwavering, and powerful in a way she had never encountered. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but in curiosity. After the first trial, Kale was exhausted but unbroken. He could see the astonishment in the faces of the alien observers, some of whom whispered to each other nervously. One advisor, tall and stone-like, leaned to whisper to the queen. She ignored him, her attention fixed on Kale. There was a quiet recognition forming in her mind. This human was different. He survived because he refused to fail, not because of physical strength alone. The second test was psychological. The chamber transformed around him, projecting illusions meant to exploit fear and doubt. Kale saw visions of failure, friends left behind, disasters he could not prevent, the faces of those he had lost in his past. Many beings had faced this test before and broken almost immediately. Kale's own memories threatened to crush him, yet he drew on his scars, his lived experiences, as proof of survival. Each scar had a story, and each story reminded him of a time he had risen when others would have fallen. He whispered to himself quietly, "I have survived worse. I can survive this." Step by step, he navigated the illusions, refusing to let fear control him. When the chamber finally released him, Kale was drenched in sweat, his body trembling, but he had not faltered. The queen's eyes widened slightly at the sight. She had ruled over countless species and observed many claims of bravery, yet few had withstood even a fraction of what Kale endured. She realized with growing awe that humans possessed an endurance unlike any other, a mixture of body, mind, and something deeper, almost unmeasurable. The third test combined intellect and creativity. Kale was placed in a room filled with complex devices, alien machines whose purposes were not immediately clear. Previous subjects had attempted to solve problems by force or by following protocol, but Kale relied on observation and instinct. He studied the devices, noticing patterns, learning how they reacted, and slowly assembling solutions with methods the aliens had not considered. Hours passed as he worked. Other species would have been frustrated or impatient, but Kale's human mind thrived in uncertainty. His ability to adapt, to improvise, to combine creativity with logic allowed him to navigate the trial in ways that alien thinking could not predict. When he finally completed the task, the chamber hummed with approval, lights shifting in patterns that signaled success. The queen stood silently, her expression unreadable, but her advisors whispered feverishly among themselves. The human's survival was not about weapons or machines. It was about heart, intelligence, and perseverance, qualities the aliens had never fully understood. Over the next few days, Kale continued his trials. The queen introduced more complex challenges, endurance tests that simulated extreme conditions, problem-solving in environments designed to break patience, and situations requiring negotiation and empathy with alien actors playing hostile roles. Each test was designed to reveal the limits of human capability. Kale exceeded every expectation. His scars ached, his muscles burned, and his body begged for rest, yet he pressed on. In quiet moments, he reflected on his past experiences, moments of fear, loss, and near defeat, and realized they were now his greatest strength. Every scar reminded him that survival was possible, and that no challenge, however alien, could break a spirit forged through real hardship. The queen observed him closely throughout. She was fascinated by the contrast between Kale's unassuming appearance and the depth of his resilience. She had never seen a species survive not by perfection, but by sheer will and adaptability. Humans did not rely on being flawless. They relied on rising again and again, no matter the cost. One evening, after a particularly grueling set of trials, Kale was brought before the queen once more. His body was bruised and a thin cut on his arm bled slightly, but he stood tall, meeting her gaze without fear. She did not speak immediately, only studied him as if trying to understand the essence of his being. "You endure," she said finally, her voice softer than before. "Not like others. You survive because you will not accept defeat. You carry every failure, every injury, every loss, and you turn it into strength. This is not weakness. This is power." Every scar reminds us of that. The advisors whispered among themselves, noting the change. Even the queen's closest counsel had never seen her react like this. There was awe, respect, and a hint of fear in their voices. Humans were supposed to be weak, and yet this human was proving them wrong in ways that no machine or protocol could replicate. Over the following weeks, Kale continued to prove himself. He learned the alien language, adapted to their customs, and demonstrated remarkable empathy in interactions with other species. Where others relied on intimidation or dominance, Kale relied on understanding, cooperation, and ingenuity. Each success challenged the aliens' assumptions and reshaped the perception of humanity across the court. The Queen began to speak to him more directly, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about the meaning of survival and endurance. Kale answered honestly, sharing stories of struggle, hope, and small victories that had shaped his life. She listened carefully, sometimes silently, letting the weight of his experiences sink in. And then came a moment that changed everything. The Queen summoned Kale to a balcony overlooking the alien city. She had not spoken to him yet, only gestured for him to come closer. Kale stepped forward, scanning the horizon, seeing the towers glinting in the light of the twin suns. "You carry more than scars," the Queen said quietly, almost to herself. "You carry stories, memories, pain, and triumph. You survive not because you are perfect, but because you are human. You rise when everything tells you not to, and in that, there is a strength even I cannot ignore. They are proof that we endure, and that endurance is not weakness. It is what allows us to rise when others fall." In the days that followed, Kale continued his tests, each one more challenging than the last. And with each success, the Queen's curiosity grew. She began to ask her advisors to document his methods, to observe how he approached problems, and to learn from him. For the first time in centuries, the rulers of Scifi's prime were seeing humans as more than fragile creatures. They were seeing a species defined by resilience, courage, and an indomitable spirit. And Kale, quiet and unassuming, continued to endure. Every scar, every ache, every memory of past struggle became a tool in his hands. He was not perfect, and he did not need to be. All he needed was the strength to rise again, and in that, he was already teaching the galaxy what it meant to be human. The city of Scifi's prime was quiet when the warning lights first began to flash. They shimmered across the crystalline towers, reflecting the twin suns in 1,000 sharp sparks. Kale had been walking through the halls, studying alien technologies and observing their methods, when a sudden vibration shook the floor beneath him. The alarms were not loud. They were precise, deliberate, but they carried a weight that made even the most composed aliens pause. The Queen appeared immediately in the control chamber, her silver eyes scanning multiple screens with calm intensity. Kale followed, curiosity and instinct blending in his mind. He had been learning about this civilization for weeks now, observing and surviving the tests, adapting to everything thrown at him. But the urgency in the Queen's movements was different. This was not a test. This was real. "Report," she said to the advisors who flanked her. Their faces were tight with tension, though none of them showed fear. "A rogue cosmic storm has entered the system," one said. "It is moving unpredictably. Standard defenses will fail. Our technology alone may not withstand it." And Kale, with his scars and memories, was already thinking of solutions where others saw only danger. The Queen turned to him. "You have endured much already. Can you contribute to solving this problem?" The control chamber became a flurry of activity. Aliens coordinated simulations, their technology precise and complex, but something was missing. Their protocols assumed predictability, that the storm could be calculated and neutralized. Kale watched as numbers shifted on screens, and then he spoke. "You're treating this like a problem to solve on paper," he said. "It's alive, unpredictable. You need flexibility, not just precision. You need to adapt as it moves, not just react." He began suggesting small changes in how the alien systems could interact, ways to reroute energy quickly, ways to combine resources creatively, and to allow some level of improvisation in drones and ships instead of strict commands. The aliens hesitated at first, unsure if he understood the full scale of the systems. Kale's understanding was intuitive, shaped by a lifetime of survival where improvisation meant life or death. The Queen allowed it. She watched as Kale's suggestions were implemented. Small at first, adjustments to energy flows, recalibrations, rerouting commands, but the difference was immediate. Ships that were being thrown off course now held steady. Communications that would have been lost now functioned. And Kale, moving from station to station, guided crews through unexpected problems, keeping them calm, focused, and working together. The storm hit harder than anyone anticipated. Flashes of green and purple lightning tore across the sky, and winds strong enough to crush buildings swirled around the city. Sensors screamed warnings, and the city's protective shields flickered under the pressure. Many of the alien teams froze, uncertain what to do. Kale moved among them, steadying them with simple words. "Watch your systems. Focus on what you can change. Don't panic. We survive by acting, not by worrying." Where aliens relied on perfection, Kale relied on experience, on learning from mistakes, and on improvising when nothing else worked. Slowly, the city began to withstand the storm, not because the technology was perfect, but because Kale's methods allowed humans and aliens alike to work together efficiently, adaptively, and creatively. The Queen observed, silent for most of the ordeal. She had never seen anything like this. Kale was not stronger, faster, or more technologically advanced than her people. He was human, and that was enough. His scars, every line on his body, were evidence of a lifetime of survival that gave him something aliens lacked, the ability to rise when failure seemed certain. By the second day, the storm reached its peak. Ships outside the city were being tossed like toys in space. Communications wavered, systems overloaded, and fear crept into the hearts of even the most disciplined alien crews. Kale, moving through the control rooms, shouted instructions, guided repairs, and offered solutions that no alien manual could contain. In a particularly dangerous moment, a critical energy conduit on one of the orbital platforms began to fail. If it went, the entire city's shield would collapse. Aliens tried to stabilize it with precision commands, but the conduit reacted unpredictably. Kale observed, then took a bold action. He directed a combination of energy reroutes and manual adjustments, improvising a solution based on observation and instinct. The conduit held barely, but it held. The Queen's eyes narrowed. She did not intervene, only watched. And when the crisis passed, when the shield stabilized and the storm began to weaken, she realized what had happened. It was not alien technology alone that had saved the city. It was a human mind, shaped by survival, scars, and experience that had guided them through. After the storm, the city was battered but intact. Buildings had minor damage, ships had survived, and countless lives had been saved. Crews worked tirelessly to repair systems, often pausing to glance at Kale in awe. He had not sought glory. He had simply done what humans always did: endure, adapt, and rise when others might fall. The Queen summoned him to her private chamber afterward. Her composure was intact, but there was a new softness in her eyes, a hint of vulnerability she had never shown before. She gestured for him to sit. "You have done what no other being could," she said quietly. "The storm would have destroyed us. My people relied on precision, on protocol, on perfection. But it was your imperfection, your humanity, that saved us. And in endurance we find strength." Kale's presence, his scars, and his courage had pierced the armor of the greatest ruler in the galaxy. In the days following the storm, Kale became more than a guest. He became a teacher, showing alien engineers, soldiers, and scientists how to think beyond rules, how to adapt under pressure, and how to survive when failure seemed certain. Every challenge he had faced on Earth became a lesson for Scifi's Prime. The aliens watched in awe as humans approached problems with creativity, empathy, and endurance. The Queen observed quietly, sometimes asking questions, sometimes merely watching. She began to understand that humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely solely on technology, strategy, or strength. They survived through adaptability, courage, and the refusal to surrender. And Kale, with his scars and quiet dignity, had become the embodiment of this philosophy. One evening, Kale walked with the Queen across the balcony of her palace. The city below was alive, systems repaired, and alien citizens going about their routines, now aware of the humans' contribution. Kale's gaze was steady, thoughtful, reflecting the twin suns in the sky. "Your people look at humans and see weakness," he said softly. "They see small bodies, fragile skin, and scars that mark past failures, but what they do not see is that we rise again. Every time, that is our strength." "I have ruled for centuries," she said. "I have seen countless species claim superiority, claim strength, but you carry something I cannot measure, something deeper. And yet it is undeniable. You endure, and in that endurance you inspire. It is what allows us to survive when everything tells us we cannot. Every scar, every pain, every loss teaches us to rise again. That is why humans cannot be underestimated." She realized then that humans were not fragile. They were a species capable of extraordinary resilience, capable of inspiring others without demanding it, capable of surviving and thriving where others might fail. Kale returned to his quarters that night, his body exhausted but his spirit steady. The storm had tested more than the city. It had tested him. And he had passed not through perfection or power, but through endurance, courage, and ingenuity. The scars on his body ached, reminders of past trials, yet they now carried a new significance. They were proof that humans could survive, adapt, and even save a civilization in the face of impossible odds. The Queen watched from her chamber as Kale moved through the city the next morning. She had called her advisors and scientists to record everything he did, to study his methods and to understand the human mind. And she knew deep within herself that the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. They were more than fragile. They were resilient. They were unpredictable, and they were extraordinary. The aftermath of the cosmic storm left Scifi's prime scarred but alive. Crystalline towers reflected the harsh light of the twin suns, some with fractures, some repaired hastily by teams of aliens guided by Kale's methods. The city buzzed with recovery, yet the Queen's mind remained unsettled. She had ruled over countless crises, yet none had left her with such a sense of awe and unease. A human had survived where she had feared failure. A human had saved her city with nothing more than courage, creativity, and a heart that refused to surrender. Kale had spent the morning assisting in repairs, moving among alien crews with quiet determination. Every task, every improvisation, every encouragement revealed the human approach. Resilience combined with intelligence, patience, and compassion. He was not a warrior in the traditional sense, yet he fought every obstacle with a strength that no blade or shield could match. The scars on his arms, legs, and chest were visible now, a testament to the life he had endured and the life that had prepared him for moments like this. The Queen summoned him to the central hall. Her expression was unusually tense, and even the advisors noticed her unease. Kale approached cautiously, not out of fear but out of respect. She had already observed much of his capability, yet there was something in her gaze now that suggested this meeting would be different. "You have proven your strength, Kale," she began, her voice steady but softer than before. "You have guided my people, adapted to challenges we thought insurmountable, and survived trials no one else could. And yet, there is more I must understand. Can you withstand what comes next?" Beyond the city, a critical orbital station that maintained the planetary shields had begun to fail. The Queen's engineers had worked tirelessly, but the station was unstable. If it collapsed, the city below would be left defenseless against even minor meteor showers or cosmic radiation. The danger was immediate, and failure was not an option. Kale studied the holographic displays. He could see the failing energy conduits, the unstable shields, and the malfunctioning navigation systems. Unlike the aliens who relied solely on calculated procedures and protocols, Kale saw possibilities, patterns, adjustments, improvisations that could stabilize the station. He also saw the human element, crew morale, exhaustion, and fear, factors the aliens often underestimated. "We need to move quickly," Kale said. "The station can be stabilized, but we must act beyond the protocol. I will guide the teams, and we will adjust as we go. Failure is not an option, but improvisation is our advantage." Kale's scars, his experience, and his endurance were now more than symbolic. They were tools that shaped his thinking, his courage, and his ability to act when all else seemed lost. The operation began immediately. Kale moved among the teams, giving instructions, adjusting plans on the fly, and calming fears. His human approach, adaptation, empathy, and relentless focus began to show results. Shields stabilized temporarily, conduits were rerouted, and critical systems began to function under extreme stress. Every failure, every spark of error became a lesson, not a reason to give up. Hours passed and fatigue set in. Kale's muscles burned, his old scars ached, and yet he did not stop. He refused. This was no longer a test, it was a mission to save lives. He had endured worse on Earth, storms that threatened entire towns, fires that consumed forests, and disasters that left nothing but pain behind. Here, in an alien city, he drew on every memory, every scar, every lesson, and he applied it with precision and courage. The Queen observed from the main control chamber. She had faced crises before, rebellions, invasions, and natural disasters, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her usual composure began to falter as she saw the human lead teams in ways her technology and planning could not match. Kale was not commanding out of fear or authority. He was inspiring through action, through courage, through undeniable humanity. Then came a critical moment. A primary energy conduit began to overload, threatening to trigger a chain reaction that could collapse the station entirely. Alien engineers froze, unsure how to react. Kale rushed forward, assessing the situation in an instant. He issued instructions, rerouted energy manually, and coordinated teams in a way that balanced precision with improvisation. Sparks flew. Alarms blared. Systems overloaded, and yet Kale moved calmly, methodically, refusing to panic. Each scar on his arms, each memory of survival gave him the confidence to act decisively. Slowly, the conduit stabilized. The danger passed, but the stress on Kale's body was immense. He stumbled slightly, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him, yet he forced himself to continue. The Queen, who had never intervened, finally approached the observation deck, her hand pressed to the railing as she watched him. Something inside her shifted. She saw not just a human performing miracles, but a being whose strength came from experience, endurance, and the ability to rise again after every fall. Every scar on Kale's body told a story of survival that no alien history could match. Tears pricked at her eyes, though she did not fully understand why. She had faced wars, rebellions, and crises, yet she had never been moved in this way. This human, fragile by appearance but immense in spirit, had done what her entire civilization could not. He had not just saved the city, he had saved her belief in hope, resilience, and courage. Kale collapsed into a chair after the operation, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his face. He looked around at the exhausted crews, their faces filled with relief and admiration. They had survived because he had shown them the power of endurance, adaptability, and quiet courage. The Queen approached him slowly, her composure finally giving way. She knelt beside him, placing her hands gently on his shoulders, and for the first time allowed herself to cry openly. Her tears were not of weakness, but of awe and recognition. She had seen what humans could endure, what humans could survive, and what humans could inspire. You carry more than scars," she whispered. "You carry courage, strength, and the will to rise when everything tells you to fall. I have never seen this before, not in centuries of ruling. You have shown me the truth of humanity. We rise again, and we keep rising, no matter what comes." The advisors watched in silence, some unsure how to respond, others filled with a quiet reverence. This was not just a human who had survived. This was a human who had inspired a queen, altered perceptions, and demonstrated that true strength was not in perfection or technology, but in spirit, endurance, and courage. Kale, exhausted but steady, nodded. "I do not seek praise, Your Majesty. I only do what humans have always done. We survive. We endure. We rise again, and we try to help others rise with us." "They are extraordinary." The city slowly began to stabilize fully, repairs completed, and life returning to the streets. But the events of those hours remained etched in memory, not just for the Queen, but for every observer who had witnessed Kale's courage and leadership. His scars, once seen as marks of weakness, were now recognized as symbols of resilience, proof that humans could endure more than any alien could predict. That night, Kale returned to his quarters, physically drained but spiritually steady. The Queen had summoned him once more, not as a ruler to a guest, but as a sovereign recognizing a being who had changed her perception forever. She bowed slightly before him, a gesture of respect that carried centuries of weight. "You have taught me what it means to endure," she said. "Not just to survive, but to rise, to inspire, and to show strength where others see weakness. I am grateful, Kale of Earth. Humanity will no longer be underestimated." "Thank you, Your Majesty. Every human carries scars and stories. We endure, and in enduring we learn, grow, and rise. That is who we are." For the first time, she had witnessed the true meaning of resilience, and it had come in the form of a human, scarred but unbowed, small but monumental in spirit. The galaxy would remember this day. Kale would not only survive, but he would redefine what it meant to be human in the eyes of a civilization that had never truly understood them. And the Queen, once unshakable and composed, had learned the most important lesson of all. Humanity's strength lies not in perfection, but in endurance, courage, and the ability to rise when all seems lost. The morning after the crisis, Scifi's prime glimmered in a quiet calm. Crystalline towers reflected the pale light of the twin suns, the air carrying the faint hum of energy systems restored. Kale walked through the city slowly, observing the repaired streets and the bustling activity of the citizens. For weeks, he had endured tests, storms, and trials that pushed every limit of his body and mind. Now, finally, the city was safe, and the consequences of human courage were clear. Citizens of Scifi's prime had begun to speak in whispers of the human who had saved them. Children pointed at him with wide eyes, marveling at his scars and the calm confidence with which he moved. Adults nodded respectfully, realizing that these marks, once perhaps a source of judgment, were now symbols of endurance and strength. Kale's presence had changed the perception of humanity in ways the Queen herself had recognized, yet even he could feel the enormity of what had happened. The Queen summoned him once more, this time to the grand hall where ambassadors from neighboring star systems waited. The room was vast, echoing with the chatter of dignitaries and diplomats, yet all eyes fell on Kale as he entered. He walked steadily, aware of his scars, aware of the eyes of thousands upon him. His body bore the marks of his past, but his spirit was unbroken. Every step he took seemed to carry the weight of human survival itself. The Queen rose from her throne and spoke, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Citizens of Scifi's Prime and allies from across the galaxy," she began, "you have witnessed the courage and resilience of Kale of Earth. This human has endured trials we believed impossible, survived disasters that would have ended others, and guided our people through danger with wisdom and heart. Today, I recognize that humanity is not weak, as many believed, but extraordinary. Humans had long been underestimated in this galaxy, dismissed as fragile and insignificant. And yet here they were, acknowledged by one of the most powerful rulers in existence, not for technology, not for armies, but for something deeper: courage, endurance, and the will to rise again. The Queen continued, her silver eyes fixed on Kale. "You have shown that survival is not measured by strength alone. It is measured by spirit, by the ability to endure hardship, to learn from pain, and to rise even when all seems lost. Kale's scars are proof of this truth, proof of the indomitable nature of humanity." The applause was hesitant at first, as many struggled to comprehend the idea that a species they had once dismissed could be so resilient. But it grew louder, until the room echoed with recognition and respect. Kale stepped forward, addressing the assembly. His voice was calm, carrying the simple clarity of someone who had lived through countless challenges. "I do not speak for myself alone," he said. "Every scar on my body represents the struggles and endurance of my people. Humanity survives because we do not give up. We endure, we learn, and we rise. This is who we are. And now we hope to stand not as outsiders, but as allies, sharing our strength, our creativity, and our spirit with the galaxy. Their courage, endurance, and ingenuity are unmatched, and they shall be treated with the respect they have earned." Kale accepted these gestures with humility, aware that this recognition was not about pride, but about mutual respect. Humanity had survived, proven itself, and now had a place among the stars. As the ceremonies continued, the Queen motioned for Kale to follow her to a quieter balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the towers. Kale stood beside her, looking out at the city he had helped save, feeling a quiet pride in what had been accomplished. "You have changed my view of the galaxy," the Queen said softly. "I have ruled for centuries, and yet I have never seen a species endure as your people do. Your scars, your stories, your courage, it is remarkable. I admit, I was wrong to underestimate humanity. We survive not because we are flawless or invincible. We survive because we persist. Every hardship, every challenge, every failure is a lesson. We rise because we must, and in rising, we often find ways to help others rise too. You have inspired my people, my advisors, and even the galaxy itself. Your scars are a testament to the strength of spirit, something no technology or power can replicate. That is the strength of humanity. The human approach, flexibility, creativity, endurance, and empathy was slowly reshaping the alien civilization. The Queen watched silently, realizing that Kale's impact went beyond the immediate crisis. Humanity's resilience, once underestimated, was now a guiding example. Systems had been improved, morale strengthened, and a culture of perseverance had begun to take root. Kale had done more than survive the storm. He had planted the seeds of change. That evening, Kale was invited to the central hall again, where the Queen presented him with a ceremonial medallion, a symbol of respect and recognition. It was simple in design, yet its meaning was profound. A human had proven the galaxy wrong, not with force or conquest, but with spirit, courage, and the will to rise after every fall. "You have earned this," the Queen said, placing the medallion around his neck. "May it serve as a reminder, not only to you but to all, that humanity is extraordinary. Your spirit, your endurance, and your courage are unmatched. The galaxy will remember this day, and your people will be honored for it." Humanity had earned a place in the stars, and his scars told the story. In the days that followed, Kale worked alongside alien engineers and leaders, sharing human methods of problem-solving, adaptation, and endurance. He guided teams in strategies that balanced logic with improvisation, efficiency with empathy, and strength with resilience. Slowly, the galaxy began to recognize that humans were not only survivors, but also innovators, capable of inspiring others in ways technology and strength alone could not. The Queen watched him, her respect and admiration deepening. She had ruled with logic and order, yet she had learned that true strength often lay where she least expected it. Humans, small and scarred, had shown her courage, resilience, and the ability to endure beyond expectation. One afternoon, Kale walked through the city with the Queen. Citizens of Scifi's Prime greeted him with respect, and even the most skeptical among the aliens now regarded him with admiration. Children asked him questions about Earth, about humans, and about the stories behind his scars. Kale answered patiently, explaining how every hardship had shaped him, how every scar had a lesson, and how every challenge had been an opportunity to rise. The Queen smiled quietly beside him. "You have not only saved my city, but also opened minds," she said. "Your people will no longer be underestimated. They will be allies, partners, and examples of what it means to endure. Not with weapons or armies, but with courage, endurance, and the refusal to give up. That is what humans do. That is who we are. Their spirit will be remembered across star systems, and their courage will guide others for generations to come." The scars on his body ached faintly, reminders of the battles and challenges that had forged him, but they also shone as proof of human resilience, endurance, and heart. For the first time in his life, Kale allowed himself a small, quiet smile. He had not only survived for himself, but for humanity. He had shown the galaxy that humans were more than fragile creatures. They were resilient, inspiring, and extraordinary. And in the eyes of the Queen, in the eyes of the citizens, and in the history of Scifi's Prime, that truth would never be forgotten. The Queen looked at him one last time, her eyes glistening. "You have shown me the true strength of humanity," she said. "May your people always rise, and may their scars always tell the story of courage, endurance, and the will to survive." Every scar, every struggle, every victory was a testament to the human soul. And so, Kale stood on the balcony, looking over the city of Scifi's Prime, the twin suns setting behind crystalline towers, and felt the pride of a survivor, a representative, and a human who had shown the galaxy the meaning of endurance. His scars were no longer just marks of past struggles. They were symbols of hope, strength, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. The stars above shimmered with possibility, and humanity's place among them was now certain. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.